Hi, Abraham. Here's my question. I've heard you say that while aging does occur in the time-space continuum that we live in, debility, senility, etc. do not need to be a part of it. Now that I'm in my 80s, I'm really appreciating your teachings after the last 20 years or so that I've been following you. My health is good, and I appear to many as being younger than my years, although I avoid all conversations regarding age and aging as much as politely possible. Still, I find it difficult to accept the changes that come with aging: declining vitality and strength, lowered mental acuity, physical changes in the body, hearing loss and ringing in the ears, a right hand that does not function properly and seems to be worsening. Based on what I've learned from you, I believe that all of this is of my own creation and can therefore be uncreated. And I think that much of it stems from my core beliefs regarding aging. But even knowing that, I seem unable to do anything about it. I would appreciate anything you might say to help me see the situation in a different light. Most people offer most of their vibration in response to what they are observing. And since there's plenty of evidence of people declining in a variety of ways as they move through time, it is easy to understand how your mere observation of others on your planet could be affecting you vibrationally. If you're spending much time watching your television, you're bombarded by those who wish to sell you something, so they work diligently at undermining your sense of well-being in order to motivate you to look for a solution to the fear that they've stimulated in you. It's the well-known sales technique of finding a need and then filling it, or in this case, creating a need or aggravating a need or pointing out a need. The power of suggestion is a real thing, isn't it? You're wise, as you said, that you try to politely avoid conversations about age and aging, but we want to ask you to consider something here. Age is nothing more than moving through time, but declining is about resistance. Declining is about not allowing the natural replenishment that you would be experiencing if you were not blocking it or pinching it off by your attention to things that oppose your well-being, or things that hinder the replenishment that would be coming if you weren't doing that thing you do that gets in the way of it. Think about, in your experience, of having a cut or a scrape on your skin, enough so that you experience bleeding or discomfort. And then focus on how you're still not suffering from that. Focus on the fact that that wound did heal and is no longer bleeding. Your body has powerful healing properties, powerful regenerating properties, powerful replenishing properties. Esther had a clarifying experience that took place over a number of days that we want to relate to you, because we want to get your attention about something. We want you to see this in a different light as you ask. This may feel off your subject, but it is exactly what your question is really about. Jerry and Esther, over a number of years, acquired another few acres and then another until they'd gathered 40 acres that were connected to each other. And that is where they built the treehouse first, so they would have a place to be while more things were in the process of becoming. And then the first office building for phones and files and people, and then a building to house the big water tanks, and then a building for housing the myriad of books and other Abraham materials, and then garages and a building to hold gatherings of those like you, and so on. Lots of buildings on this property. And also, since it was raw land, they dug trenches to bring in electrical lines and trenches for water lines and so on. Jerry and Esther had visited Thomas Jefferson's place, Monticello, and Jerry was fascinated by the good ideas that were demonstrated on that land. He especially liked that water was collected from the rooftops that fell into ditches around the perimeter of the buildings that led to water storage containers to be used in the gardens and so forth. And so on every building, he asked for rain gutters to be installed, with pipes leading from the gutters to large underground containers of rainwater. There are pipes all over this property. He wanted that for their gardens and their ponds and their swimming pools and so on. They dug a well 440 feet deep to provide more water than what the rain would provide, understanding that there are underground aquifers that are storing large quantities of water underground. And then, attached a windmill to bring the water up, and electric pumps to help when no wind was present. As they acquired more acres in preparation for future development, they dug another well with another pump with 2 very large above-ground storage tanks on another piece of the property. And then, a few days ago, Esther noticed some large brown spots on some of the grass, which subsequently led to discovering that the water pressure was not sufficient to reach everywhere it was intended to reach. She didn't know it at the time, but the gardening company had already been worrying about the brown grass, and they didn't understand at the time that it was about water pressure, not about time on the system. So they kept adding more time to the system, thinking that that would solve the problem. But it did not solve the problem because they didn't understand what the problem was. It was not about not enough time going on the lawn or enough water. It was about not enough water pressure and so not enough spraying distance. So their misunderstanding of that problem caused them to attempt the wrong solution. That's always how it goes, isn't it? And that created another problem. Now, the grass is being overwatered in some spots, actually rotting and turning dark, while it is still not reaching the other spots. And so now Esther is aware of 2 problems: brown dry grass and black rotting grass. So she's having a step 1 moment, isn't she? Ask, what's going on with our grass? What's going on with this system? She raised the question with gardeners and so forth, and they continued to put more water on the timers. And then she awakened one morning with no water in her house. She turned on the kitchen faucet, and no water came out. So she went out to the well house, and when she looked upward at the gigantic water storage tank in that well house, the red handle on the long rope, which is the way you can tell how much water is actually in the storage tank, indicated that the water in the tank was very low. Lower than she had ever seen it. So low, in fact, that the pressure tanks had turned off to prevent burning up. Thus, no water in the house. So now, a new question. Why is this tank empty? The obvious answer that we want to call your attention to in this long story is because more water is going out than is coming in. In other words, the replenishing of the tank was out of balance. And that question brought another answer. The other well, in the other well house with the 2 big tanks, must not be supplying the system as they should. But why? That led to another answer. There was no water in those big tanks. But why? Because the well is not producing water. Because the motor, deep down 440 feet in that well, is no longer working. And because the pressure tanks are now no longer working, burned out. And because the electrical circuits on the wall are no longer working, burned out. Wow. It took a while and a lot of exploring and a continuing list of experiences which posed deeper questions, which brought deeper answers. But just as this well experience and all of the logic that Esther discovered in the unfolding of that experience, the simple and ever-present truth that you can always count on in this universe is this. You have a source who will continuously, constantly, and eternally replenish you, but you have to keep your connection open to that replenishment. You cannot let your pump burn out by being angry or fearful. You cannot let your pump stop working or your tanks run dry. You have to find a way to continually allow the replenishing. You have headwaters and aquifers and streams of well-being flowing to you eternally. But you have to find ways of allowing your flow gates to be open. You have to know the infinite flow of resources is there and that you have access to it. And you have to be aware when something has blocked the flow, the natural flow. The gardeners can change the setting on the irrigation system all day long and it won't solve the problem. The pipes can be laid and the pressure tanks can be put in place and the electrical components can all be replaced. But unless you're connected to the source of the replenishment, you will not be replenished. You can't listen to others complain about their decline. You can't listen to those who wish to sell you products, make their statements of certainty about your diminishment. You can't focus on things that feel bad when you focus upon them and stay in the replenishing mode. You have to know that Source is there for you and that all resources that you require are there for you. And then you must do anything and everything you can think of doing to keep your pipes open and your pumps pumping and the resources flowing into the cells of your body. You just have to find a way, no matter where you are currently standing, of feeling good. You have to step far enough away from what's bothering you to reconnect with your knowledge of the stream of well-being. And as long as you are in this physical body, which is your choice, by the way, your choice of being in your body and your choice of how long you stay, your cells will call forward, just like the irrigation system does, the resources it needs to thrive. The only question is the pathway open for those resources to flow? And the answer to that is, how are you feeling? If we were standing in your physical shoes, we would not put up with brown dead grass or black rotting grass. We would figure out why it isn't working or why we don't feel good. We would do anything and everything we can think of to improve the way we feel. We would find better feeling thoughts that would lead to inspired action. And if we're doing that and knowing that we are doing that on a steady and conscious basis, and there is still a steady, always in the way stumbling block, we would find a way around that. We would find a different path. Just as Esther's question or problem and the answer or solution were simple. Problem, diminished gardens. Solution, get the replenishing source of water to them. The same is true for you. Problem, declining vitality and strength. Solution, more water, or we mean more source energy flowing. Problem, lowered mental acuity. Solution, more source energy. Problem, physical changes, hearing loss, right hand not functioning. Solution, find more ways to allow more good feeling connection to source energy. It's the same, isn't it? It's always the same. Every question and answer, every problem and solution that you experience on your physical planet has a law-based source energy, laws of the universe, consistent, learnable, teachable, equivalent. We have enjoyed this interaction immensely. There is great love here for you. And for now, we are complete.